name is Rafael. Oh, there we go. And Sarah, thank you again, and thanks to Allison and the whole team there, Leading Age Maryland, for allowing us the opportunity to do this. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Rafael Haciski. I work at Kendall Johnson. We are an insurance brokerage based out of the Philadelphia area. However, unlike most other brokers, instead of doing a sort of a geographical focus, we have an industry focus in various high risk exposure industries. And senior living is one of our largest portfolios, currently representing about 250 senior living communities across 25 states. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two, as the commercial says. I'm an attorney by trade turned insurance broker. So my job back in the day was to sue insurance carriers on multi-million-dollar claims disputes. And then I got called into the healthcare senior living industry, where my job now is to put those lawyers out of business. But that probably won't happen. But I use the term a lot with JKJ and outsourced risk management department services. And what that means is that when you work with us, you gain a team of no less than 6 professionals, all who are focused on driving down the risk for your organization, bringing value to the table from a risk management standpoint, from a safety standpoint, not just at the renewal process, but throughout the policy year, which is equally as important as the renewal stage, is all the stuff that you're doing throughout the year to make yourself best in class, so that at the next renewal, you're putting yourself in the best light in front of the insurance carriers who are interested in writing your business and protecting your organization. And it starts really with the broker who you're working with. And that broker selection process, sort of like those insurance applications, are the bane of a lot of people's existence. Folks don't want to take through the process of picking out their broker. Sometimes there's just a relationship that's been in place for a decade or two. Maybe it's running stale. Maybe we need to blow the dust off the current relationship and just kind of pressure test it and see if we really are getting what we're getting from the folks who are currently serving us, and if we deserve more. So the broker selection process is a great tool for any organization to effectively and efficiently select the best broker and the best insurance company. There's several ways to choose an insurance brokerage and a risk management partner. And I know the words insurance and partner may seem like an unlikely pair, but the alliance of those two is really the most important thing for any executive team. There's really 2 main models of selecting a broker. I'll go with the typical model that we see most folks do, and then model 2, which is the one obviously we recommend. So selection model number 1, some organizations will choose a few insurance brokers to quote their insurance program. Ultimately, it's going to result in significant work and resources that are being spent to provide underwriting information from the organization to those brokers, completing various applications, hosting a variety of different loss control visits for multiple brokers and multiple insurance companies. It's a lot of wasted time and energy is consumed just for jockeying and allocation of insurance markets. And then after all that stuff is done, the proposals that are presented from those brokers to the organization have to be reviewed by each and every broker that's involved. And at the end of the day, only one of those brokers is going to be awarded the business. And the problem is that this process doesn't really place a lot of value on a long tenured partnership, was really what a lot of these carriers are looking for. This model is typically focused on the premiums and the cost of the various insurance companies and broker services, and the impact on the organization's total cost of risk or secondary when undertaking the model. So in this scenario where the organization prefers to work with one broker but gets the quote best quote from a second broker, the organization is forced to either work with the broker that isn't the first choice, or they have to resort to signing a broker of record letter to give the work of one broker to another broker. This always leads to a difficult situation, hard feelings, a breach in trust is inevitable as they opt for that best quote or the second choice broker. And the organization also develops a tarnished reputation within the insurance market and the underwriting community. This is a really muddied water approach, and unfortunately, it's the process that we see a lot of not-for-profits undertake before we start to get involved with them. Selection model number 2 is really the way that we would embrace the process, and it involves a lot more of a systematic approach as opposed to this dog and pony show that we see a lot of things go down with the RFP process with a lot of organizations. So model 2, a broker selection process can be greatly simplified by just looking at the options, ultimately providing you with the best value for the insurance dollar or total cost of risk. And in this model, an organization ends up with the best broker, the best insurance company per the organization's criteria, and it allows the organization to choose a broker through a competitive process that separately evaluates the benefits of each broker's resources and services. Brokers can present their case for why you should do business with their organization, why they would make a good partner to develop and implement the risk management program. And the brokers at the end need to be your representatives, your advocates. You need to have a solid relationship with them, sometimes beyond just the insurance and risk management aspects. This becomes very critical as the insurance companies start to cut services that they provide from their end, which we've seen over the last 2 years, especially post-COVID. Once a broker is selected, you're in a position to have one broker clearly represent you to the insurance market. The insurance companies know that they have a fair chance of writing the business. They won't be concerned about if they're with the right broker or with the wrong broker. The entire process of selecting an insurance company is then the responsibility of that broker you've chosen. And management doesn't have to do that analysis of all the varying different proposals and coverage terms. That's the broker's job. And while management is welcome and should be a part of the process, the burden of the analysis really rests on the part of your broker. And ultimately, the organization seeking the alternatives is guaranteed that they'll end up doing business with the broker of their choice and the insurance company of the choice. And the elimination of those other agents are done early on in the process before significant work is done, both by the broker/agent side, but also by the organization side. So what are the procedures or the outlines or the steps that we take to undertake that broker selection process? Really, first of all, you want to have a management commitment to the broker selection process. It's important to determine in advance whether or not you're really going to be doing the systematic approach, or if you're going to be doing that traditional model number one that we don't want to do. Next off, you're going to want to identify potential brokers. You might want to limit the number of brokers that you're calling in to interview. However, at the time you're giving a fair evaluation to those who are calling on you, you want to make sure that you're being reasonable with the number of interviews you're giving out, but also making sure that you're speaking to folks who are invested in your industry. Early on, you need to determine the selection criteria. It's very helpful to do this in advance with your management internally. And what you like to do is create a comparison tool to help fairly evaluate the different brokers. So after determining the variables and discussing what variables you're going to be looking for, you can give weight to each variable in order to help you focus on what you think are the most important areas from your broker relationship. And remember, this is your tool. This is a living document. So there's really no right or wrong answer, but the key is to get this taken care of and addressed within your team prior to really starting that process of reviewing broker opportunities. Management team needs to be involved throughout. So consider incorporating the financial, the clinical, and the human resource staff into the presentations, since the material that's going to be covered and the discussions that will be undertaken are likely going to affect all of those disciplines. All decision makers need to be involved in the process, and they also will benefit by learning what other services may be available out in the marketplace. When you do the interviews, explain the process to the brokers about who you're interviewing. Let them know how much time they'll have for the interview. Ultimately, I think a reasonable time is about 90 to 120 minutes per broker interview. It's far less time than you'll spend with each broker if you have multiple brokers involved in quoting the business, which you do not want to do. But here you have an opportunity to provide that broker with a thorough service-driven approach that they can present to you about, what services are they bringing to the table, and insisting that the folks who are going to be servicing you are the folks who are in front of you at this meeting. A lot of times we see some of these brokerages will bring sort of the star A team to close the deal, but then bring in the junior interns to service the account for the life of that account, which is to the detriment of the organization. After you've done the interview process, you want to rate the broker. Some may prefer to use a tool of their own that they create from a broker rating chart or something like that. We have a broker selection scorecard that we offer our clients that they use that sort of guides them through the different things they should look for, and then how you can scale those different line items with regards to importance. And in the end, you want to make sure that the broker that you're selecting should understand that they are now going to be a partner with the organization in all aspects of the risk management and insurance, beyond, as I said earlier, just the placement of insurance. A lot of questions that we get throughout the process from our clients, are varying, but they really kind of hover around this stuff. So, at what point during the insurance renewal cycle should this process take place? Obviously, if you're, an October 1st renewal, now is not the time to do it. You don't want to do it, 1 month or 2 months prior to your upcoming renewal. Best is to give it at least 6 months before your renewal, so that you have time to vet the brokers, go through the process of reviewing their responses, and then making the selection, and then giving both them and you enough runway between that time period and the renewal date to get up and running, gather data, get applications done, build the marketing submission for the renewal process. So really, you want to be starting that, no less than 6 months before the renewal. A lot of times we get asked, how frequently should the broker relationship be reviewed? That's really up to you. I mean, what we see typically is about every 3 to 6 years. And honestly, we get pressure tested as well from our clients. And we welcome that, because it's an opportunity for us to sort of highlight the good things that we're doing, but also it allows us to kind of ascertain where problems are coming up, if at all, and where we can improve to better service the account that we're speaking with at that time. A good broker should be performing a stewardship review annually with you, which is really going to be probably the driver of that discussion. Are there times when the system doesn't work at all? Absolutely. If you have a situation where none of the brokers are specialists in your line of work, you may very likely end up in a situation where no broker has any wide array of insurance markets or availability. And if that's the case, then you probably do need to go back to step one. But I can tell you there are a few, JKJ included, that really do specialize in that senior living industry and have that sort of background experience to service the senior living world, because even though it's so nuanced and so niche market. So who actually will be available to you, and what are their qualifications and experience? Well, the expertise of the broker when working with your class of business is critical, as I said. It's important to know that the broker you ultimately choose actually represents the insurance companies who will be likely the ones that will be protecting your organization. So if 5 insurers control 90% of the market and the broker you choose only represents 2 of the 5, this could be a big problem, and thereby creating such a much more inefficient process down the road. So really, the procedures here, what I like to focus on is management commitment, identifying those potential brokers you're going to be working with, not saturating it, but having maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 brokers at the beginning process, and then whittling that down to 1, 2, 3. Determining the selection criteria early on, making sure that your management staff is invested in vetting through the broker services that are being offered to you, and having those critical conversations, as opposed to just saying, quote my business, give me the best price. You need to always have that management team involved, as I said, from the C-suite down into HR, clinical. They're going to bring questions to the table that you might not come up with, which is going to be helpful throughout the process. And then again, with the interview process, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time in the policy year to make those selections and have those discussions, because I use the term parking an aircraft carrier. It's a tough process to build up a relationship with your insurance broker. It's a big spend for any organization, and they want to make sure that it's in the right hands with folks who are knowing what they're doing. I know I spoke a lot there, and I also have mentioned that I have a broker selection card that I'd be happy to send over to Sarah and have that shared with the program this morning. So with that, I think I'm up with my time, and I will pass it back to you, Sarah. Thank you very much again.